This is River Roaring, celebrating the luminous life force in us all. Hello, darling. I'm River Roaring, and this episode is Off-Planet Wisdom. My journey with UFOs, ETs, and the multidimensional life. Wow, is there a lot of controversy and debate and talk and conversation and energy around the conversation around UFOs, unidentified flying objects, which now have all kinds of other names and acronyms. I think UAP might be a more modern one. ETs, which stands for extraterrestrial being, and that has all kinds of different words. A lot of people say aliens, and there are many other words for extraterrestrial beings. And the multidimensional life, which is, are there other life forms existing in the universe outside of what we are seeing and doing here together as humans on Earth? And I have been through quite a journey with this material and this subject in the last year and a half-ish, or maybe 2 years. And I want to share my story today in the hopes that it will be helpful to someone. Because for me, this has been epic is like too small a word. It's been beyond an epic journey, beyond words, this journey into the world of multidimensions and multidimensional life. So I started out a couple years back. Basically, I had not really thought about this much. It just didn't occur to me that much, and I want to give a tiny bit of my own history so you can see what background I have that comes into this story. But just to go right into 2 years ago, this had not occurred to me. I would see in the news headlines sometimes UFO. I would see UFO sighting. I would see controversy like, no, not really. It was just a balloon. That's about it. It reminds me of just a very surface level headline-y kind of awareness of this issue. And I had thought to myself, well, I do believe there's life outside of Earth and planet Earth and humans, and what we can see here. And I was like, but I don't know how we would ever know. It seems like it would just be a feeling inside that was true. Like, I don't imagine in my life I'll ever really see anything one way or another to, tell me the answer. I was like, probably, I think there's outside of Earth, there are life, and I'll probably never see any proof or anything like that. It hasn't been scary for me, and I'm glad. I think that's important, because I think there are going to be a lot of people who try to scare us with this issue. And that's another reason I'm making this story, is because I believe that in the future, the dark side is going to be trying to make us afraid of this issue. So I want to share my journey in case it can help others have a different understanding of the issue also. So basically, the short background for me as a person who 2 years ago, I'm basically 54 years old. So basically, grew up in kind of like a small town, West Texas, but very wealthy from oil, not our family. Went to college and got a philosophy degree because I knew, like when I saw this big catalog of options, I'm like, oh, I want to know all the ideas in the world. That's easy. I'm going to get a philosophy degree. Got that in undergrad. Then realized, hey, it'd be more interesting to me if I saw how they make ideas where people make each other do those ideas. It's not just a dusty book on the shelf of ideas. It's like, no, where do they come up with ideas and then we make each other do them? And so I went to law school. So actually still in search of how the world functions and how many ideas are out there and what they are. And then after law school was a trial attorney and lobbyist with my own law office for over 20 years, downtown Austin, Texas, Travis County. And I always represented individuals in trials in court, not companies or institutions. And at the legislature, I always represented the public interest, not any businesses or commercial interest. So I was at the same time a pretty radical, hardcore activist for over 10 years, like 10 to 15, very hardcore. Community organizer, speaking in public, rounding people up to improve society through laws. And so more than halfway through that, I had my own deep, dark night of the soul, opening and cracking open. I was not spiritual at that time at all. And then as my own spirit cracked open and I went on a sexual and spiritual journey that was insane, that's another story. 5 years into that, I got in a ritual, a spiritual ritual, Toltec. I received my life purpose to be a sexual healer. It took years to start the training and offering of services in that department and start to see how to close down the law office. And I'm quickly telling you that once I went on a spiritual journey, I spent 7 years apprenticing in the Toltec Eagle Knight lineage with especially Heather Ashamara and Raven. And that is still with me. All the teachings of Toltec are very alive in me right now. Also, starting 13 years ago or 14, I got deep into a specific lineage of yoga from India called Satyananda, studying under Swami Satyananda Saraswati, eventually going to India to get direct transmission of some higher practices. And that Tantra and Kundalini work is still with me and very active in my life. And in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been in a deep dive with the Tao through especially the teacher Lauren Johnson, studying in the Universal Healing Tao tradition of Mantak Chia. I would have been with Mantak Chia in person spring 2020 if we hadn't had the lockdowns, but that didn't happen. And I brought all of that with me 2 years ago. So that's where I was 2 years ago, studying ideas, how the world and globe work, getting involved with it, getting out of involvement with it, starting to guide others. And now I do work with people one-on-one and in groups at this point. So 2 years ago, here I am. Really didn't know or really care that much as I saw the UFO come up in a headline, like whatever, not my issue. And then I was listening to a guy I really love online and I've met before, Dr. Zach Bush. And I was listening to Zach Bush online and he said, hey, pretty soon there's going to be some breaking news media that UFOs do exist, ETs do exist, that we definitely know about life from other planets for sure. And there also may come with that a scare tactic. So when you hear about aliens from the government or official transmission lines, be careful because there's a really big effort to scare you with the issue in a lie, with telling you things that aren't true about it. So there's a really large official agenda, I now understand, on the dark side to amass information in this area and eventually, when the larger of society wakes up to it, use it to scare us. Because why? So they can have global and galactic warfare. Of course, that's the only thing the dark side does. Basically, when you look at how they play, So anyway, Dr. Zach Bush lets us know soon, just watch the media in the next few weeks, something's going to happen. I'm like, what? What's he talking about? What the heck is he talking about? Kept looking at the media and finally realized he must have been talking about Stephen Greer. So Stephen Greer is a number one source here, and he has, just look up Stephen, Steven Greer online. He has a lot of different web presences, and he's a very strong, powerful force. He was a heart surgeon, I think, for decades, and then he deeply got into the question of really extraterrestrials and communicating with them, but also what's going on in the government with that. And Stephen Greer's life is dedicated to exposing the United States and other countries' deep state UFO and extraterrestrial operations. And so I got deeper into his work, and he has at least, I think, 400 or more deep inside government and private contractors, whistleblowers, who are people who have very hands-on experience inside these programs, seeing and hearing these things in the government, and are now coming out and blowing the whistle at the risk of their lives, because many people have been murdered talking about this issue and who knew about the deep state. So that is all how I first, as a past trial attorney and lobbyist, that was kind of easier for me to understand. Like, oh, I can easily see the government doing this based on all of my experience with all levels of government, and basically working to hold them at all levels of government accountable for 20 years. I'm like, yeah, this smells correct, and these witnesses I don't think they're all lying. I think they're telling the truth. And so companies like, what's it called? So my head is like radiation. There's some companies that are the biggest companies, like Lockheed, and these kind of companies are deep inside with the deep state. So you can look that up. I started going like, okay, so basically this is believable. So basically, yes, we have had a lot of visitations from other planets over the years, especially beginning with Roswell 1947, I think, that are documented in current U.S. history, modern U.S. history, that are like by the government, and that the government knows about and was involved in. And the government is actively in this major operation deep into understanding off-planet technology, imitating through reverse engineering off-planet technology, and interacting a lot with off-planet beings. And other than that, I'll let you go research Stephen Greer. But my eyes were opened because I could tell that was true information as a trial attorney and a lobbyist, as the deeper I looked at it. So then I'm like, whoa, it's kind of mind-blowing that that's definitely true. The government knows about it. And I think the biggest secret that Stephen Greer is trying to get out there is that we could already all have free energy, totally unlimited, totally environmentally conscious and safe, and totally free, because off-planet technology has already taught people inside the deepest levels of government and the deep state and the private side that's together with them. They already know how to do it, and they just literally are not sharing it with us. But we all as a globe could have unlimited, environmentally friendly, free energy, and human beings in the United States government, and I think others as well, but in ours and these companies already know how to do it. And that is disgusting, because we're over here fighting over like oil and gas or solar or wind or blah, blah, blah. Like, what is it? I'm going to kill you over this. A lot of people die over that. And a lot of people die over not having enough fuel. It's just so crazy on that side alone. So leaving that alone, my mind was blown. I'm walking around the universe with a blown mind. And I find myself in Orlando, Florida, after I had a chance to speak with Kelly Brogan in Miami. Was in Orlando at the conference of none other than Martin Armstrong, who has Armstrong Economics and has a free blog I highly recommend. And I got to meet Martin Armstrong in person and be at that conference and meet other people from around the world who are awesome free thinkers. And I was pretty high on Stephen Greer. I started talking about it with some really incredible other people. And a guy slides a note across the table at me. "I think you're ready for this," he says. And on the note it says, "Alien Interview." I'm like, okay. So Alien Interview is a book. It's on Audible. It's also on Amazon for print. Now I have both. I listened to Alien Interview on the drive back from Florida and basically took it in. And what we have here is the official transcripts from the being who was still alive in the Roswell landing. I think it was 47. I have always had a little tiny interest in this landing because I was born in Roswell, or as some say, hatched in Roswell myself a few years later than that. But so Roswell, New Mexico, the famous Roswell UFO landing. There are unclassified now government documents documenting that landing. I think Stephen Greer has that in his mega databases. That's documented. And what this is, Alien Interview, the alien who lived was kept in a room and would not appear to communicate with anybody except this young Army nurse who walked into the room, because they brought in medical people to see if they could tell what was going on with the being, because it was injured, but they'd never seen that kind of body. And the nurse, who was in her 20s, 23 I think, the nurse picked up a signal from the alien directly. It was very easy for her to hear the alien communicate, but it was only in her mind. And so it was kind of blowing her mind as well, because she had never had anything like this happen with her. But she was sure they were communicating completely. And so she let the higher up men, of course, know that this being is communicating with me. And through a long story, they put she with this alien in a room together and had them communicating for a period of about 3 weeks. And every time a session would end, the nurse would go and work with a transcriber to tell her exactly what had just happened in that session, what the alien had said word for word, and then would meticulously go over the transcripts later to make sure that the transcriber had heard her and that was accurately transcribed. And the woman, at the end of 3 weeks, I won't spoil it how it happens, but it's a typical ridiculously stupid move on the government's part, and the alien is now gone and we can't communicate with it. It's kind of almost like stereotypical sitcom. And then the nurse, frankly, wasn't useful to the government anymore, and they put her in a witness protection program with a changed identity under insanely, the kind of vow of secrecy of if you say one word, you're dead, and so is your family kind of thing. That ultimate vow of secrecy. And so she was in secret with these secrets, living for very long decades. And then when she was about to die in her 80s, I think she was in Ireland at the time by then, but she put something that she had saved all of those decades into an envelope and mailed it to a guy who had written about UFOs who she thought was doing a good job. And he put the transcripts out. It turned out she had kept a copy of all the transcripts under her mattress. And when they decided to get rid of her, they had forgotten, after all the copies that were going back and forth, they had forgotten she had that one last copy, and they did not know it was under her bed. And she had tucked a copy of all those transcripts away and kept them for, I think, 6 decades. And then upon her deathbed, she had them sent on to this man who, word for word, put them into the Alien Interview. So the Alien Interview is actually those transcripts. So I'm sitting there reading the Alien Interview, what the fuck? And This is almost the beginning of my journey with channeled voices. I'm going to call it channeled because no one could hear audibly the alien talking with this lady. So a channeled voice is another being is speaking through me. I'm channeling another being if another being is speaking through me. That's not exactly what was happening. She was having a conversation with the alien, but the alien was able to communicate into her and no one else could hear it. So how on earth can we know if this is true or not? How can we know if this is possible? How can we trust any channeled voice? How on earth could we possibly know if a channeled voice is true or not? I was thinking the same thing. I was just like, yeah, how would we know? And then my trial attorney spidey senses kicked in, and my work with global and federal and state and local governments and all the work I've done with media. I was like, wait a minute, I actually know how to assess large amounts of information and distill what is factual based on triangulation of sources, trustworthiness factors of sources. You know, every source who touches the information has a trustworthiness factor, such as, well, I'm not going to go into it. And then how many different trustworthy people have said this and what other evidence is there, like pictures and stuff. And so in the earthly information, I'm kind of an expert on discerning factual information from non-fact. I'm not saying I'm perfect at all. I'm just saying I'm an expert at that. And I take in large amounts of info at this point and can move with it. And so I thought, it's the same thing with the off-planet voices. Like, wait a minute, well, who's connected with this? There's a source, there's a human being saying this is happening through them, and then there's, they're saying there's another being there. And so look at the human first. So who is this person? What's their background? What's their motive? Give them a trustworthiness factor and a how many different sources are saying the same thing factor. It's actually the same analysis with off-planet wisdom for me right now. So when I look at a channeled voice or a voice that's come through someone else at this point, I'm kind of looking at, well, who's the human? And is it very possible that that human being could have said those things? That's one of the things I look at. I would call it trustworthiness factor. And I do not believe a 23-year-old nurse was making that up, nor do I believe she could have made that up in the rest of her life and typed it up and sent it in. And maybe there's another explanation. Of course. Then the next question, well, could this be like a big hoax and someone did da-da-da? It could. So now that I look at who said this, could they have said that? Where does the information triangulate to other information? And also, what is my body doing and my gut doing about this? Is it like, this is bullshit, which I often do right now when I'm hearing AI. Or is it like, wait, this feels really true? And I'm not asking you to come to any conclusion about anything I'm talking about today at all. In fact, I invite you to use your gut and your own body and see if what I'm saying feels true or not. And I have no desire for it to feel true or not with you. I just hope this is helpful. So alien interview, and then Errol is the being, and Errol is telling us how Errol is from other dimensions and another planetary system, and telling us a lot of things about the Earth and why the Earth in the interplanetary system of billions and billions of beings, all in all these other dimensions, all these other planets, all these other star systems, why they're interested in Earth, why she was in Earth, who she really is, where she comes from, what kind of body she's using here to do her research on Earth, who her friends are, what their mission is, and also a big story about why a lot of other beings are currently interested in Earth, and also about the dark Earth experience of the veils or the illusions, which is very, very many sources talk about, which is we're here on Earth in a relatively low density. We have very dense and material objects, and we have a current era here on Earth where basically Kali Yuga, everything is backward, and we're in the dark side right now of the phase of Earth. So if you hear my Dark Side Revealed show, the dark side is control and possession. And right now we're in a very heavily control and possession era that's about to get a little tighter before it pops open. But anyway, she's telling us the story about how Earth is what she calls a prison planet. So if you hear that word prison planet, they're probably quoting Alien Interview. They might be. That's one phrase you could use, but what she's really talking about is the veils of forgetting that we have here, which is why we don't understand we're connected with all the other beings, because we're under a veil of forgetting here on Earth, where we forgot. We cannot remember our lives before we got into these little old bodies, but we each have infinite lifespans. And outside of this veil of forgetting, what she's calling prison planet, we know that. We know all of our entire soul's span in infinite directions and how we're connected to the universe. So that's why it's because of the fact that I am making this recording and communicating like, hey, I think other things exist on other planets, is proof that what she's saying, we're in the prison planet, because we've all forgotten that and we're still talking about it, trying to figure it out. And it goes a lot deeper than that. I encourage you to look at it. And around that time, I really tuned into, I told my friend, this is going on, this is so wild. She's like, what? I'm waking up to things too. I have this other book I've just heard. I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, you might want a session from this medium. You might know her. And then she told me who she was. I'm like, what? I know her? I didn't know she was a medium though. So I get a session with my friend, the medium, and boom, she tells me all kinds of things about my guides on the other side, a bunch of other interdimensional beings who are interested and involved in my life and here to support me, and all these other things about my interdimensional being and other timelines, past, future, and what have you. I'm like, oh, wow, this is pretty wild. I have an eternal soul. I'm immortal. You're immortal. You're eternal. You know, if anything about you having a soul that existed before this body and that will exist after this body, if any of that rings true for you, just think about it. You already believe in extraterrestrial beings because your own soul lives outside of this world, and after you leave this body, your soul will still live. That's an ET. That's an extraterrestrial right there. It's another dimensional being that will be you before and after this body. When that just hit me, like, whoa, I've always believed in, for at least the last 20 years of my spiritual dive, which is another long story, I've believed in my own eternal soul. So yeah, I actually didn't even realize I believe in interdimensional beings. So all these things are coming on for me. And at that point, I'm not going to belabor every single book that I got into, but I think I'll take a little break here, and then part 2 will be a pretty wild ride through all kinds of other books and sources and readings and practices. I'm even thinking of ending with a practice. See you for part 2.